What are the origins of Brexit?
We are the United Kingdom. You can eat our spotted dicks.
Welcome back to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new here. And there are some links in the description. Blah, 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 blah. It would really support the channel. We love you guys. Anyway, how did we get to Brexit? What are the origins of Brexit? In 1957, countries such as West Germany, Luxembourg, France all signed the Treaty of Rome. The Treaty of Rome established the European Economic Community, an economic community that the United Kingdom had aimed to be a part of for many decades later. The UK had first applied to the EEC in 1963. France's president at the time, President Charles de Gaulle, vetoed the application. He believed that the UK would always be Americanized. They'd always be on the American side, that they could not play ball for the Europeans. And boy, was he right. Look what happened. In 1973, the UK finally became part of the EEC under Ted Heath, who was Prime Minister from 1970 to 1974.
A beginning of another stage in the construction of a new and a greater united Europe.
2 years later, however, we had our first, shall we call it Brexit? We had our first referendum on whether we wanted to be a part of the EEC. Brexit was just the last in a long line. In 1975, the UK were asked, do you think the UK should stay in the European Common Market? And 67% of the UK, including its administrative islands, voted yes, we would like to be part of Europe, please, the European Economic Community. In 1984, when we had Margaret Thatcher's no, she basically wanted to reduce the budget payment to the EEC in 1984 and fought tooth and nail to reduce those payments to the EEC. She believed the UK were paying too much into the EEC budget. Basically, that's how we got in the first place in 1973. Fine, you can come in, but your payments will be massive. It's like having a high interest loan. Margaret Thatcher's battle with the EEC to reduce budget payments was victorious. Our budget payments to the EEC reduced by 20% to 12% by the time she was done. And despite the UK being the third poorest nation in the community, we was paying more into the budget because of our lack of farms. Yeah, farm subsidiaries made up 70% of the EEC budget at the time. And then came the formal formation of the EU with the Maastricht Treaty in 1993.
Signing of the Treaty on European Union, commonly known as the Maastricht Treaty. When the treaty came into force in 1993, it marked the official start of the European Union.
The EEC formally became the EU, the European Union, as we know it today. The formation of the EU created political alliance. It created shared foreign policy. It created a common citizens' rights. And for most countries, not us, because we refuse to be part of it, it created the Eurozone, the euro as a single currency. When Tony Blair was in charge in 1997, he was strongly pro-European and wanted to rebuild ties with the European Union. In 1999, Brussels imposed a beef ban, essentially, because there was an outbreak of the mad cow disease. So Brussels basically put a ban on our beef and we couldn't sell our beef to the rest of Europe. Brussels had had a ban on British beef during the late 90s because of the mad cow disease. Though they lifted the restrictions off of our mad cow beef, France kept its own ban on our beef for years after it. In the year 2000, after a 27-year ban, Britain were allowed to finally sell their chocolate to the rest of Europe. They weren't allowed to before then, and it was all because we didn't use enough cocoa butter and used too much vegetable oil. They even wanted to call it Vegelit, or household milk chocolate. They believed Kit Kat, Cadbury's, all them kind of things had too much milk in them. In 2007, the European Union failed to get a European constitution passed in the European Parliament. So, they signed a new treaty called the Lisbon Treaty, which Gordon Brown failed to turn up to a televised ceremony to sign it. He signed it afterwards, but the rest of the states basically said, oh, you should have defended it more vigorously. But the Lisbon Treaty basically created a foreign minister, a foreign policy minister. It created a commission president. It gave the EU broader powers. David Cameron, who was Prime Minister from 2010 until 2016, had vetoed for the first time a treaty in 2011. In 2013, he gave a speech in which he outlined that the EU and the UK needed to reform their ties. They need to improve the relationship. Basically, the EU needs to fucking improve itself because it was shit for us. And at the same time, UKIP, which was led by Nigel Farage in the European Parliament, were growing stronger and stronger and stronger, advocating a break from the European Union, a Brexit. When David Cameron became Prime Minister in 2015 with no coalition with Nick Clegg, he set about to redo these ties and re-establish a better working relationship with the EU.
But it's also been an opportunity to start to talk to leaders about how we can reform the EU and the UK's relationship with it.
He wanted changes in welfare payments, he wanted changes in financial safeguards, and he wanted easier ways for the UK to block EU legislation. And in February 2016, he announced the results of those negotiations. Basically, non. The EU weren't having any of it because we were mud on their shoes. UKIP obviously were like, oh, we've got to leave now. We've got to leave. David Cameron then announced the EU referendum.
British people decide our future in Europe through an in-out referendum on Thursday, the 23rd of June.
He then sets June 23rd of 2016 as the referendum date. As like, okay, EU, now we're going to have a referendum. See what we do. He thought that he gambled. He thought, yeah, it might be pretty close, but it will remain. He didn't expect for the referendum to go how it did.
At just gone 4:30 in the morning, we are calling it for leave to win this referendum.
And that is why he resigned very soon after the result, despite saying that no matter what the result is, he would carry on as Prime Minister. He didn't. He basically took a gamble, lost, and now look what we're going through.
British people have made a very clear decision to take a different path. And as such, I think the country requires fresh leadership to take it in this direction.
51.9% leave and 48.1% remain. A very close majority for leave. Theresa May then triggered Article 50 of the Treaty on the European Union and triggered Brexit negotiations for 2 years.
A few minutes ago in Brussels, the United Kingdom's permanent representative to the EU handed a letter to the President of the European Council on my behalf, confirming the government's decision to invoke Article 50 of the Treaty on European Union.
We know how that went along. If Boris, Theresa May, Rishi, Liz Truss, did we count Liz Truss? Yeah, we count Liz Truss. If they'd made anything of Brexit, we might have been sitting here discussing a different story, but they didn't. It's all because politicians took gambles thinking that they could beat the European Union, beat these systems, and make it more favourable for the UK, but they didn't. They made it worse. That's how it is, isn't it?